Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We're continuing to learn halachos taanis. Mirz Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Mem Amid Beis. We pick up in Siman Tav Kuf Samach Beis with Sif Yud Gimel on the very bottom line of Mem Amid Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Yesh mi she'omer. Yesh mi she'omer, Pardon me, give me 1 second over here. Something's not right. Okay, back in order. Yesh mi she'omer. The Mechaber says, there is one who says, Shemi shenadar v'omar. If somebody takes a vow, literally, somebody makes a neder, v'omar, and he says, Im loy elech l'makom ploni, if I will not travel to a specific place, he names a place, eshev b'taanis, I will keep a taanis. So what this person has done is, he's made a kabbalas taanis, but he's made this kabbalas taanis al tanai. He's made it conditional. He said, if I don't go to this and this place, then I will keep a taanis. Im loy elech l'makom ploni, if I don't go to this and this named place, Eshev b'taanis, I will keep a taanis. So there is one who says the Mechaber, Me'achar shama shehisnehu davar harishus, since the condition that he made is based on him doing something which is optional. Person says, if I don't go to Borough Park, I'm going to keep a taanis. Now there's no mitzvah involved in going to Borough Park. Pardon to those those of you who live in Borough Park. But there's no mitzvah involved in traveling to Borough Park. Somebody says, if I don't go to the store, I'm going to keep a taanis. There's no mitzvah involved in going to the store. It's completely optional. If he wants to do it, he'll do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he won't do it. So, says the Mechaber, there are those who say that in such a case, heavy asmachta. This is something which is called an asmachta. What's an asmachta? Explains the Ramah in the parentheses, Pirush, Sha'adam saimech bedaitoi sheyuchal lasois davar echad. A person assumes that he is fully able to perform a certain act, val smach zeh, and based on his complete and total belief that he's going to be able to accomplish that thing, hu noider oy mischayev bedavar. He goes ahead and he makes a neder, or he takes on some sort of obligation that if he doesn't do it, he'll have to fulfill that obligation. And since it's an asmachta, he's not bound by the neder. So what the Mechaber is saying is like this. First, let's get clear in our minds exactly what an asmachta is. An asmachta is somebody is 100% certain that he's able to accomplish a certain thing. And he says, if I don't do it, I'll give $1,000 to tzedakah. He doesn't really want to give the $1,000 to tzedakah. He doesn't really want to commit himself to give the $1,000 to tzedakah. He doesn't believe for a nanosecond that he's going to become obligated to give the $1,000 to tzedakah. Because with his entire heart and his entire mind, he fully believes that he is going to accomplish the thing that he made the gift conditional upon. So the same thing over here, says the Mechaber. This person said, if I don't go to Borough Park, I'm gonna keep a taanis. But he's 100% planning on going to Borough Park, and the car is outside warming up, and he listened to the traffic report and there's no traffic, and he knows he's going to Borough Park. So when he made this commitment, and he said, if I don't go to Borough Park, I'm going to keep a taanis, there is no way in his mind that he actually thought he was committing himself to keep a taanis. That's called an asmachta, and an asmachta is not binding. Now, in this case, in the words of the Mechaber made the point. The Mechaber says here on the top line of Mem Amud Beis, Me'achar shama shehisnehu davar harishus. The thing that he made the taanis conditional upon is a dvar harishus. It's an optional thing. He could go to Borough Park if he wants to, but if he wants to, he doesn't have to go to Borough Park. That's the case in which there are those shitas, or the words of the Mechaber are yesh mi she'omer. There is one who says, and the Berurah brings this down from the Rabbeinu Yerucham. So the Mechaber says, in this specific case, where the thing that the that the obligation to fast hinges upon is a davar harishus, where that thing is optional. That's when Rabbi Yerucham says that this is considered an asmachta and it's not binding. But now let's continue the mechaber. Now the mechaber continues and he says, Aval, however, im amar, if a person says loy im loy es a mitzvah ploinis eshev betainis, if somebody says, if I don't do this specific mitzvah, then I will keep a taanis. V'chein, or similarly, im amar, if somebody says, im yatzileni Hashem mitzara, if Hashem will save me from a certain problem. Let's say somebody has a health scare, Rahman al-Islam, somebody's going in for a surgery, a very dangerous surgery. The person says, if Hashem will save me from this tzara, if I'll come out all healthy, oyim yatzliach darki. Or if somebody says, if the Rabbeinu Shalom gives me hatzlacha, somebody's embarking on a major business deal. He doesn't know if it's going to work out or not. He says, im yatzliach darki, if the Rabbeinu Shalom will give me hatzlacha, then I'll fast, lo yehevi asmachta. That is not an asmachta, and in that case, if he is saved from his tzara, or the Rabbeinu Shalom gives him the hatzlacha that he was looking for, he's bound by his t'nai, and he does have to keep a taanis. So again, we have over here two different cases in the mechaber. In the first case, a person pledged to keep a taanis if he accomplishes a certain davar harishus, if he does something which is optional. The case that the mechaber gave, if I travel to a certain place. So, a person says, if I go to Berurah Park, if I don't go to Berurah Park, then I'm going to keep a taanis. Again, that's completely optional. In that case, the mechaber said, that's an asmachta, and it's not binding. Why isn't it binding? Two reasons, apparently. One reason is that he was 100% certain that he was going to fulfill the Tanai, and therefore he didn't dream that he was going to have to fast. So that kabbalah is not a real kabbalah. He never really meant that he was going to fast. And the thing that he hinged the fast upon is only a davar rishus. It's something which is completely optional. That's case number one. In case number two, he hinged his pledge to fast not on something optional. He hinged it upon a mitzvah. Let's say the person says, it's Sukkot, and he's very busy in the morning, and he says, I want to make sure that I'm going to remember to take lulav and esrog today. If I don't take the arba minim today, I'm going to fast. In that case, he's bound by the fast, and if he indeed fails to meet the condition, if he chas v'chalila doesn't take the lulav and esrog, he's going to have to fast. Now let's see the where and the whys of this Siman. Says the Mishnah Berurah back on Mem Amud Aleph and Ois Katan Nun Aleph. Yesh mi she'omer. Now again, the language of the mechaber is, there is one who says the Chavetz Chaim, Nakat lashon zeh ladin harishon. The mechaber uses this wording specifically for his first case. In his first case, shemashe hisnehu davar harishus, where the thing that the pledge to fast is hinged upon is something which is optional, then that's where the mechaber says yesh mi she'omer, where the halachah that the mechaber says is only a singular opinion. De bazeh yesh harbe paiskim shecholkin. On that halachah, there are many paiskim who disagree with that halachah. With svir lahu, and they hold the avshat tanai haya b'dvar harishus, even though the thing that he hinged his pledge to fast upon is something which is optional, kevan shahadavar shehischayev, since the thing that he's obligating himself to do, namely to fast, hu dvar mitzvah, that's considered a dvar mitzvah. When the person says, if I don't go to Berurah Park, I'm going to fast, he doesn't just mean if I don't go to Berurah Park, I'm going to refrain from eating for a day. He means a taanis, which is a taanis shel mitzvah. He means he's going to keep a taanis, and he's going to refrain from eating in order to be ma'er himself to tshuva. He's going to keep a day of taanis, and he's going to keep it as a day to be mispalel. He's going to keep it as a day from taanis. He's going to pain himself in order to garner schusim. So he means a taanis that is a type of mitzvah. So in that case, there are many poskim who say, Lo shayich bazeh asmachta, We don't apply the rule of asmachta. When somebody goes ahead and he takes a pledge to do a dvar mitzvah, then even if he's basing it, even if he's hinging it upon something which we know he's certain he's going to be able to accomplish, once you undertake to do a dvar mitzvah, even if it's conditional, we hold you to it. That's like the pasuk in Kehelis. Moitzas vasecha tishmar va'asisa. What you let out of your lips, you should make sure to keep. If you pledge to do a dvar mitzvah, even if you make it conditional, once you let out of your mouth the idea, the concept that you're going to do a dvar mitzvah, that's a pledge that you're making to the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's not easily forgiven. So moitzas vasecha tishmar va'asisa. Therefore, true, you made it conditional, and you made it conditional upon something which is only optional. You made it conditional upon something which is not chashuv. We don't care if you go to Borough Park or you don't go to Borough Park. Doesn't matter. Once you said, if I don't go to Borough Park, I'm going to fast, that's already too much that you undertook to fast. And these poskim differ with the opinion of the Mechaber here, with this Yesh Misha Omer, and they hold that that pledge is binding and you're going to have to fast. If you don't go to Borough Park, you're going to have to fast. However, the latter part of Sif Yud Gimel over here, where somebody goes ahead and he pledges to do a dvar mitzvah, or somebody, where he hinges it upon a dvar mitzvah, he says, if I don't do a certain mitzvah, then I'm going to fast. Or if somebody says I'm going to fast, if the Rebbeinu Shalom saves me, or the Rebbeinu Shalom gives me hatzlacha, on those two halachos of Sif Yud Gimel, nobody disagrees. So this Yesh Misha Omer only applies to the first halacha that's mentioned over here. Somebody said, if I don't go to a certain place, I'm going to fast. Or he might have made a slightly different tonight, a slightly different condition. Kigain, for example, Sha'amar, he said, if I do a certain thing, then I'm going to fast. Vasa, and then he goes ahead and he does it. But again, it's something optional. It's something which doesn't matter. If somebody says, I don't know, somebody says, if I don't know, nothing's coming to my mind right now. Okay. The same halacha would apply if somebody didn't say, I'm going to sit for a taanis. If somebody said, I'm going to give tzedakah. Giving tzedakah is also a mitzvah. So again, just to encapsulate, the first halacha here of Sif Gimel is, somebody goes ahead and he pledges to do a dvar mitzvah, either to give tzedakah or to keep a taanis. If he either does do something which is a dvar rishus, or if he doesn't do something which is a dvar rishus. In that case, the Mechaber brings down this Rabbeinu Yerucham, who says there are those that say that this is only an asmachta, and therefore whether you fulfill, if you fail to fulfill the condition of the Tanai, you're still not required to fast, or you're still not required to give tzedakah, because this is only an asmachta. But we see here in the Chavetz Chaim that there are many who disagree with this, and they say that since the thing that you pledge to do, to keep the taanis or to keep tzedakah, is a dvar mitzvah, if you fail to keep the conditions of the Tanai, you have to go ahead and keep the taanis, and you have to give the tzedakah, because of moitzas vasecha tishmar va'asisa. Ois cotton dun dalad ad mema bebeis heavy asmachta va'achroinim kasvu di'esh lahachmer meyacha sharabim chol kamazeh halachah lamaisa. The Mishnah Berurah brings down that many achroinim write that you should be machmir, you should rule stringently, and if you fail to keep the conditions of the Tanai, you should do the dvar mitzvah. You should give the tzedakah or you should keep the taanis. Now we go to the second halacha of Sif Yud Gimel, Ois cotton dun hey. Aval im omar, if somebody says that if I don't do a certain mitzvah, if I don't perform this and this mitzvah, then I'm going to keep a taanis, or then I'm going to give tzedakah, that's binding. Over there, we don't apply the rule of asmachta. Avalim Omar, why? How come we don't apply the rule of asmachta over here? A guy said, if I don't put on tefillin today, I'm going to keep a taanis. He knows he's going to put on tefillin. He puts on tefillin every day of his life. He's going to put on tefillin. He doesn't dream that he's going to have to keep a taanis. So how come it's not an asmachta? So the Chavetz Chaim tells me why. The asa lezares atzmai ledvar mitzvah. When somebody makes a statement like that, he's being mizares himself. He's giving himself a push in order to go do a dvar mitzvah. That's serious. He means that seriously, because now he's dealing with the davar chashuv. He's not dealing with just going to Borough Park, with who cares if he goes to Borough Park or he doesn't go to Borough Park. He's talking about putting on tefillin. Putting on tefillin is a mitzvah say. Putting on tefillin is avodas Hashem. Putting on tefillin is shakol keneged kol terakula. Now he's dealing with something which is the davar chashuv ad ma'od. When somebody's dealing with a davar chashuv, so it's clear that the statement that he made, if I don't put on tefillin, I'm going to keep a taanis, it must be that he understands in his mind that he requires some sort of ziruz. Maybe he's afraid he's going to forget because he has something going on that morning or whatever it is, and he undertook something to be mizaris himself to do a mitzvah. That is chashuv, that's binding, and that's not considered an asmachta. Is katan nunvav, or the person makes a condition, and he says, if im yatzileni Hashem mitzar, I'm going to keep a taanis if the Rabbeinu Shalom saves me from a particular tsar. Says the Chavetz Chaim, there's no question that that's binding. The mikra molehu, that we can learn out from a beferish pasuk. By Yaakov Avinu. What does it say by Yaakov Avinu when he was running away from Esav? Vayidar Yaakov neder. Yaakov undertook a neder. Im yiyeh kimi madi. If Hashem will be with me, ushmarani baderech hazer asher anochi hoylech, and he'll protect me in the road that I'm going to be traveling now. I'm running away from Esav and I'm going to Lavan. If the Rebbeinu Shalom will protect me and he'll take care of me. So then Yaakov Avinu said, then aser asrenu lach. I'm going to give meiser, and I'm going to make this matzev, I'm going to make it a mizbeach. V'chein, it's similarly, Vayidar Yisrael neder lemar, im nasayin titein esa amazeh biyadi. Klal Yisrael, when they were in the Midbar, and they had to make a milchama with Canaan, so with the Canaanim, they took on a neder, and they said, if the Rebbeinu Shalom saves us, then we're going to make a cherem. We're going to give the spoils of war, we're going to give them to Hegdish. So here you see beferish psukim in the Torah HaKadoshah, where people they pledged to tzedakah based on a Tanai if the Rebbeinu Shalom will help them. And clearly the Tanai was binding. Oyim yatzliach darki, gamzeh mikra di Yaakov. We could see this also in a pasuk by Yaakov Avinu. V'nasar li lechem lecha lo beged lilbaish. That's the Yaakov Avinu was saying, if the Rebbeinu Shalom will give me hatzlacha. Umishum de b'skus shehetzliach gamaru makni. Again, the reason this is not an asmachta is because if somebody says, if the Rebbeinu Shalom saves me from this operation, I'll give a taanis. Somebody says, if the Rebbeinu Shalom makes me matzliach in my business and I have parnasa, I'll go do a mitzvah, I'll give tzedakah, or I'll make a taanis. He's gamaru makni. He really makes up in his mind to take on the obligation to go ahead and give the tzedakah or to fast the taanis in return for what the Rebbeinu Shalom did for him. Okay, now we go to Siman Tavkuf Samach Gimel. Din mi shehir b'libay lehisanois, the halacha of one who thought in his mind, he undertook in his mind a kabbalas taanis. Ubay sif echad, and here we have one sif. Says the Mechaber, mi shehir b'libay, if somebody thinks in his mind, shaloi b'shas tfilas hamincha, not by mincha. Now, we already learned the halacha previously, that the time to be makabel taanis, we learned on Lamites Amid Aleph and Sivvav, on the bottom line, Emasai mekabeloi, when do you make a kabbalas taanis? Betfilas mincha. You do it by mincha time. Omer b'shemei tefillah, you say in shemei tefillah, you make a verbal declaration. Oy achar shesim tfilasai, or after Shemona Esrei kodim sheyakar raglov, you say hareini b'taanis yachid machar. And then the Mechaber said in Sivav, if he didn't verbalize this kabbalas taanis, imhir belibai, if he was mahar, if he thought in his mind shuhu makabel taanis lamachar, that he's being makabel taanis tomorrow. So here the Mechaber says, if somebody makes a kabbalas taanis in his mind and he doesn't speak it out, he doesn't verbalize it, but he does it b'shas mincha, heavy kabbalah. That's a valid kabbalah. So here in Tavkuf Samach Gimel says the Mechaber, mi shehir b'libay, if somebody makes a kabbalas taanis belev, which is a valid kabbalas taanis if it's done b'shas mincha, but he doesn't do it b'shas mincha. Shaloi b'shas tfilas hamincha lehisanis lamachar. He thought this kabbalas taanis in his mind that he's going to fast tomorrow, but he didn't do it b'shas mincha. He did it earlier. Lo have a kabbalah. That's not a valid kabbalah. Deloi adif mehaitzi b'fiv lehisanis lamachar. Certainly, a kabbalas taanis that you think in your mind is not more powerful than a clearly verbalized kabbalas taanis. And the halachah by a verbalized kabbalas taanis is that it has to be done b'shas mincha. If you do it earlier than mincha time on the day before your taanis, it's not an effective kabbalas taanis. So if a verbalized kabbalas taanis is not effective, if it's before mincha time, certainly a kabbalas taanis believe a hearer of a kabbalas taanis is certainly not effective before mincha. Delay have a kabbalas taanis. This is not a kabbalas taanis. Since you didn't make this kabbalas taanis at mincha time, you made it earlier. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut now. Mi sheher b'liboy. Ritzayna loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say over here is afilu gamar b'daitay v'kibel mamachshavtay lehisanis lamachar. Even if this was a bona fide kabbalas taanis in his mind. Remember, we spoke about two different thought processes a person might have in his mind. One is, I'm not going to eat tomorrow. I'm not going to eat tomorrow is never considered a kabbalas taanis. A kabbalas taanis believe means that the person thought in his mind, I am accepting upon myself a taanis tomorrow. That's a kabbalas taanis believe. Says the Chavetz Chaim here in Eis Aleph, what the Mechaber means is, even if this was a bona fide kabbalas taanis believe, he had 100% the proper kavana. He thought in his mind, I'm being mekabel taanis tomorrow. But he didn't do it b'shas tfilas hamincha. He didn't do it at mincha time. He did it earlier than that. Eis Cotton Bays, it's not a valid kabbalas taanis, shaloi b'shas tfilas hamincha, because he didn't do this at mincha time. Ella kaidem lazeh. He did it earlier than mincha, the day before the day that he wanted to fast. Di'ilo achar shehispalel. See, the Mechaber doesn't say clearly that he did it early. The Mechaber just says he didn't do it at mincha time. Okay, does the Mechaber mean that he did it later than mincha time? Says the Chavetz Chaim that can't be. Because De'ilu achar shehispalel, if the Mechaber was addressing a case where he had this machshava of kabbalas taanis later than mincha, mashma me'achroinim, then the achroinim imply the mahani akapala b'di'eved, that b'di'eved this kabbalah would be effective, kol zman shehu yoim, as long as it's still day. So the achroinim say that b'di'eved, if somebody has a machshava, a valid machshava of kabbalas taanis after mincha, but before shkia, the day before the taanis, so it's still day, then b'di'eved that is effective. Bein b'yitzah b'feh, whether it's a verbalized statement to bein behira, or even if it's only b'machshava. So clearly the Mechaber is talking about a case where this machshava of kabbalas taanis that the Mechaber says was shaloi b'shas tfilas hamincha, it was earlier in the day than mincha time. That's not a kabbalas taanis. Eis Cotton Gimel, delay have a kabbalas taanis. That's not an effective kabbalas taanis because it's too early. Mashma miloshen zeh. The Chavetz Chaim says it is implied by the language of the Mechaber, de'ein tzarich lehisanis klal, that this person doesn't have to fast at all. You had a machshava of kabbalas taanis at 11 o'clock in the morning on Monday to be mekabel taanis for Tuesday. It's before mincha gedola. You're not davening mincha. It's too early in the day. It's not a valid kabbalas taanis, and you don't even have to fast. That's the implication of the words of the Mechaber. Kevin shaloi kibla b'tfilas hamincha, since you didn't make this kabbalah at the proper time, you made it too early. Aval, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, ha'achroinim hiskimu. The achroinim agree, and he brings this down from the Magen Avram, the Taz, and the Maimar Mordechai. Aval ha'achroinim hiskimu. The achroinim agree. The mechuyev lehisanois al kol panim midin neder, that this person still has to refrain from eating because of a neder. Moitzos vasecha tishmar va'asisa. If you got up at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday and you made a verbal kabbalas taanis, you said, Hareini betainis yachid lemachar. Yiratzain, was the language, Yiratzan shetei tfilasi b'yon taanisi mikubelas. You know what? You just went ahead and you made a verbal commitment to do a dvar mitzvah. You made a verbal commitment to fast. So it's true that your kabbalas taanis is not a valid kabbalas taanis, and because it's not a valid kabbalas taanis, you're going to have an issue with saying anenu, right? And you're going to have an issue that if you're trying to be mekayim a neder that you owe a taanis, you won't be able to pay off your neder with this taanis because it's not a valid taanis, because it doesn't have a valid kabbalas taanis. And remember, in order for a taanis to be a valid taanis, it has to have a valid kabbalas taanis. This taanis doesn't have a valid kabbalas taanis because you made it 10 o'clock in the morning, but you still can't eat. Now, I just told you that in the context of if you made a verbal statement. Now let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says here in the brackets, which is very fascinating. Va'afilu rak gomar b'daitoi v'kibel b'machshavtoi l'his'anois gam ken yesh machmirin. The Chavetz Chaim says that there are those that are machmir even if he didn't make a verbal kabbalas taanis. Even if his kabbalas taanis at 10 o'clock in the morning was only b'machshava, it was only a thought, there are still those that say that you should be machmer and refrain from eating on the next day to hear kedibur dami, because thought is like speech. Hear kedibur dami. Now I have to tell you right away that the Aruch HaShulchan disagrees with this completely. I'll read to you the language of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "Aval hirer b'liba shaloi b'shas mincha." If somebody has a machshava of kabbalas taanis earlier than mincha time, mutter loilecha lechol hadeyis, then according to all opinions, he's allowed to go ahead and he's allowed to eat. And the Aruch HaShulchan explains why. The hataima da'anu oisrim b'sham milechel hevi mishum neder. The only valid argument that there would be to not allow this person to eat would be because of hilchas nedarim, because of mitzvah sasecha tishmar v'asisa. The Shitas HaRambam neder v'tainis inyan echadu kamasha kasafti sham, because we have the Shitas HaRambam who says that being makabel taanis has the din of a neder, even though you don't use the verbal format of a neder, you don't say harei alai, but a kabbalas taanis is a geder of a neder. So okay, so if you went ahead and you said at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to fast tomorrow, it's true that in the halachos of kabbalas taanis, it's not a valid kabbalas taanis, but it's still a neder. So you're not allowed to eat. But, says the Aruch HaShulchan, Vim Kain, if it's based on Hilchas Nedarim, Habeneder Kaimalon B'Yardei Siman Reish Yud, and it's very clear in Yardei and Reish Yud and Hilchas Nedarim that by a neder, the tzarech lahaitzi b'sfasav dafka. You need to verbalize a neder. Dum yud shvua, just like the halacha by a shvua. Tiksiv, where it says in the pasuk, levate b'sfasayim, to verbalize it with your lips. V'im kain, and if so, pshita delav klumhu. So since you need levate b'sfasayim, for it to be a neder, you need a verbal statement. You need a verbal utterance. A machshava cannot affect the neder. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, can't be that if you had a machshavas kabbalas taanis at 10 o'clock in the morning, for the next day you're not allowed to eat. Based on what? A kabbalas taanis it isn't, a neder it isn't, because you didn't verbalize it. Mitzvah sasecha tishmar vasisa, you didn't say anything. So how is it that a machshava is going to go ahead and make you have to refrain from eating? So the Aruch HaShulchan says over here, and he uses very strong language. He says lechol hadeyis. Yet the Mishnah Berurah says over here, gam ken yesh machmirin. And who does he bring this down from? He brings it down from the Chai Adam. Okay. Achein, continues the Chavetz Chaim here, 2 lines from the bottom in the Mishnah Berurah in my print. Achein, le'inyan tfilas anenu mashma d'lo yachal loymar. But the Achronim seem to agree that anenu you can't say because it's not a valid taanis. But, says the Chavetz Chaim, like we've seen many times in this Siman, v'hinei kol zeh le'inyan hashliach tzibur, loymar anenu ben goyel roifei u'b'chasima kanog. This that you can't say anenu would only apply to the shliach tzibur who wants to make an individual bracha between re'eva anyenu and rifa'enu and be chaysim with ha'ina be'es tzara. That you can't do because it's not a valid taanis. But again, if an individual wants to insert anenu in the middle of the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, we already saw the Ramah earlier in Sif Hey, the Yachid Yakalaymer Afilu like Klal. A Yachid can always put anenu into Shemei Tefillah without any kabbalas taanis at all. The Chalshkein being Yanenu, certainly in our case here, Shekibloi, where there was a kabbalas taanis, just it was not a valid kabbalas taanis because it was Shalai B'Tfilas HaMincha. There are many poskim who hold that is a valid kabbalas taanis. So certainly a Yachid could say anenu. Okay. Now I have to tell you also that the Aruch HaShulchan is very confused by this entire Siman Tavkuf Samach Gimel. It's very, very interesting. I'll read to you the language of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says like this. Kasav Rabbeinu HaBeis Yosef, the Beis Yosef writes, the Mechaber writes, Mi shehir b'libay shalai b'shas tfilas hamincha. If somebody has a machshava in his mind earlier than mincha time, lihisanis lamachar, to fast the next day, lo have a kabbalah. It's not a kabbalah. Because it's no better, it's not any more powerful than somebody who actually made a verbal statement of kabbalas taanis. Delay have a kabbalas taanis, where we say it's not a valid kabbalas taanis, because he didn't make it at mincha time. Ad kan l'shayna. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, I don't know why the Shulchan Aruch says this. We already learned this halacha in the previous Siman, Sivav. We learned this in Sivav. Shekasav Sham, the Mechaber writes in Sivav, in the previous Siman, Emasai Mekabloi, when are you supposed to be Mekabel Taanis? B'tfilas HaMincha, at Mincha time. So the Mechaber already taught us the halacha that a kabbalas taanis has to be at Mincha time. So there's no chiddush in that. So do I need Siman Tavkov Samach Gimel to tell me that a kabbalas taanis not made at Mincha time is not valid? No. You already told me in Siman Tavkov Samach Beis in Sivav. You already told me, Emasai Mekabloi, when do you make a kabbalas taanis? B'tfilas HaMincha. So we know that halacha already. Okay, so maybe you gave me Siman Tavkov Samach Gimel to tell me the halacha of Mi Shehirar B'Libai, of a kabbalas taanis B'Leiv. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, no. V'im loy hoitzi b'fiv elahir B'Libai, heavy kabbalah. And the Mechaber already told me in the previous Siman in Sivav, he already told me if you don't make a verbal declaration of a kabbalas taanis, if you just do it in your mind, heavy kabbalah, it's a valid kabbalah. And you told me in Sivav, v'hu sheyahar kein b'shas tfilas hamincha, as long as you had the machshava of kabbalas taanis at mincha time. So all of the halachos of Siman Tavkov Samach Gimel, you already taught me in Siman Tavkov Samach Beis. Omach Yiddish Bekan. So what chiddush is there in Siman Tavkov Samach Gimel? And the Aruch HaShulchan totally scratches his head. He says, I don't know what Siman Tavkov Samach Gimel is here for. And says the Aruch HaShulchan, v'doichik loymar, it would be a bit doichik to say, the mipnei HaTorah kasav din zeh bezeh siman, the Torah did not discuss this halacha in Tavkov Samach Beis. The Torah made a separate siman, Tavkov Samach Gimel, and that's where the Torah discusses this halacha. So for the Torah, it makes perfect sense. He didn't lay out these halachas in Tavkov Samach Beis. He laid them out in Tavkov Samach Gimel. So the Torah needed a separate siman. But the Mechaber gave us these halachas in Tavkov Samach Beis. So why do I need Tavkov Samach Gimel? So the Aruch HaShulchan says, maybe you want to suggest that the reason the Mechaber did it is to follow the pattern of the Torah. So Gamke l'koisvay shalaladale gasimin. So the Mechaber repeated it in a separate siman in Tavkov Samach Gimel, because otherwise the order of Shulchan Aruch won't be the same as the order of the Torah. He's going to have to skip a siman. The numbering system is going to be wrong. He says tzarachian. The Aruch HaShulchan says it's a daichik to tell me that the Mechaber gave me a whole siman here, 2 lines, but a whole siman in Shulchan Aruch that was not necessary just to keep the simanim aligned with the Torah. Okay. Siman Tavkov Samach Daled din layel shelafnei taanis, the halachos that pertain to the night before a taanis of boy sif echad, and here we have 1 sif. Says the Mechaber, and this is a halacha I think that many people don't know. Kol taanis she'oichlim boy balayla. Any one of the tanesim where it is permissible to eat the night before. So that would be any one of the taanis tziburs that we have other than Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, right? Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, you're allowed to eat the night before. Asar B'Tevis, you're allowed to eat the night before. Taanis Esther, Tzem Gedalia, all of these Tanaisim, you're allowed to eat the night before. It's only Tisha B'Av that you're not allowed to eat the night before, and Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to eat the night before. Taanis Yachid, so if we're talking about, let's say, the Taanis Tzibur, that the Tzibur is geyser when there's a lack of rain in Eretz Yisrael, the first 3 Tanaisim, you're allowed to eat the night before. The second set of Tanaisim, you're not allowed to eat the night before. A Taanis Yachid, that somebody's makabel on himself, generally speaking, you're allowed to eat the night before. Unless he's makabel on himself beferish, then he's not allowed to eat the night before. So says the Mechaber, Kol Taanis She'oiklim Boi Balayla, any Taanis where you're allowed to eat the night before, Bein Tzibur, whether it's a Taanis Tzibur, Bein Yachid, whether it's a Taanis Yachid, Hareza Oichel V'Shoiseh, you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to drink, Ad Sheyala Amud Hashachar. When does the Taanis begin? At Alois. I'm going to use the English word dawn, even though exactly what dawn is a matter of great dispute, and exactly when Alois HaShachar is also subject to different opinions. But whatever it is, the Taanis begins at Alois HaShachar in the morning. V'hu, but now comes the caveat, says the Mechaber, V'hu shelo yoshen shinas kva. But this is dependent on that you didn't go to sleep and sleep a shinas kva, sleep, a solid sleep. Avalim yoshan shinas kva. But if you went to sleep at night and you already slept a shinas kva, einoi chayzer v'oichel, you're not allowed to go eat when you wake up, v'lo yishaisa, and you're not allowed to drink when you get up, ella imkein hisna lechal oilishtois. Unless last night when you went to sleep, you had a tanai, and you said, I'm going to sleep, but I'm not being makabel the taanis yet. Tomorrow morning when I wake up before Alois, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to eat breakfast, or I'm going to have a coffee. But somebody went to sleep, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz by night. He ate supper, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz by night. All right, it's bedtime, I'm going to sleep. Everybody remember tomorrow's a taanis. He went to sleep. He wakes up 3 o'clock in the morning, he's thirsty, and he says, oh, I wonder if the taanis started yet. When is Alois? Oh no, the taanis didn't start yet, I could eat. No, you can't eat. No. By going to sleep the night before, a shinas kva, and not making a tanai that I'm going to eat tomorrow morning, you were already makabel taanis. Why were you already makabel taanis? Because you no longer expected to eat. You were going to sleep for the night, and you were planning on waking up tomorrow morning and being betainis. So you had no expectation of eating anymore. So by going to sleep, you were already makabel taanis. And now the taanis already began for you. Because let's remember, even though technically you're allowed to eat at night, what have we always said? Technically the taanis begins the night before. Because if Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is a taanis, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz begins the night before. A halachic day always starts the night before. So Shiva Asar B'Tammuz starts the night before. So technically the taanis starts the night before. Just we're makel and we let you eat during the night. But not if you were makabel taanis, and by going to sleep for a shinas kva without a tanai, you were already makabel taanis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, is cut now. For who shall yashan? This is only true if you didn't go to sleep. Hainu afilu im gamer sudasai mikvar. Even if you finished eating supper, v'roitze kaidem arayoim lachzor v'lechel, and now you want to eat and you want to drink before Alois. Rashai, you're allowed to. So the fact that you finished supper the night before, we don't say, oh, you finished supper, you aren't planning on eating anymore. Now that's a kabbalas taanis. No, I'm still up. I'm still up. Whatever I'm still up, I might go eat. So you're allowed to eat the whole night, no problem. Ice cut and bays. When does it become a problem? If you sleep a shinas kva, a permanent, so to speak, sleep. Aval misnam name, but somebody who's dozing off on the couch, he's sleeping, but he's not sleeping. Ter, he's awake, but he's not awake. That's not considered a sleep. Ice cut and gimel. Avalim yachin shinas kva. But once you go to sleep for the night for a shinas kva, afilu shalai al mitasai, even if it's not in your bed. You went to the living room, you went on the recliner, you leaned back, you said, I'm going to sleep. And now you went to sleep for an hour. That's a shinas kva. A shinas kva, you're ready makabel taanis. The Mechaber writes this in a very general language. Mashba, the implication is, the Svirle that the Mechaber holds, Afilu Yashan B'Seich Hasuda, Even if he fell asleep in the middle of supper. Gamkein shuv aser lecho. When he wakes up, if he slept a shinas kva in middle of supper by the dining room table, he fell asleep and he slept for an hour. That's considered a shinas kva. He wakes up by the table, there's still food. He's not allowed to keep on eating. Aser lecho v'ligmar sudasai kishader mishnasai. He can't finish his meal when he wakes up. Like the Mechaber seems to conclude in the Beis Yosef in the Torah. Aval kama achronim hiskimu, however, many achronim agree, and he brings this down from the Bach, the Taz, the Elirabah, the Riyaz, the Sanal. Others, aval kama achronim hiskimu, dem yoshin b'soich hasuda. If you fell asleep in the middle of the meal, mutar legamra achar, you're allowed to finish the meal. Because if the guy fell asleep in the middle of the meal, clearly his intent wasn't that he finished eating. He never even got up from the table. Nevertheless, the Chavetz Chaim says somebody who rules stringently and will refrain from eating, kadosh ye amer loy. They call him a kadosh. And he brings this down from the Bach. So if you slept a shinas kva, you're no longer allowed to eat or drink unless you made a tanai kaidam hashena. Unless before you went to sleep, you spoke out a tanai and you said, I'm going to sleep, but I'm not being taanis yet. I'm still going to eat and drink when I wake up before alois. V'oz mutter, and then it's mutter to eat and drink. Afilu gamar sudasai kaidam hashena. Even if you finished your meal. V'gam yoshed achakach shinas kva, and then you went to sleep for a shvinas kva. Ta'adayin lekibel alav taanis. Because clearly you aren't taanis yet. Okay, now let's see the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Haga, v'yesh oimrim de b'shtia ein tzarich tanai. And there are those that say that for drinking, you don't need a tanai. The mistama daite shel adam l'shtia achar hashena, because the stam das, the default position of a person, is that when he wakes up, he's going to take a drink. V'have ki'ilu hisna. And that stam das makes it as if he made a tanai beferish. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois cotton hay, the mistama daitai, the derech adam liyos tzameach hashinasai. It's the way of a person that when he wakes up, he's thirsty. So everybody takes a drink when they wake up. Ve'evikilu hisna, and it's as if he made a tanai. Kasva achrayim, the achrayim right. The lechatchila, roya lahachmur lahasnais af l'shtia kedasa mechaber. Lechatchila, you should make a tanai for drinking, like the opinion of the Mechaber. So if you want to get up in the morning before Alois to have a coffee, you should be master the night before that I'm having a coffee tomorrow morning before Alois. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, im rogil lishtais achar hashena, if you're a person who always drinks when you get up, ein sarach lahasnais, then you do not have to make a tanai. Just want to see. The Aruch HaShulchan says over here, he also brings this down. V'yesh oimrim d'shtia tamid mutter. There are those who say that drinking is always mutter, even without a tanai. The mishtia eina adam mesiach das. Because a person never is mesiach das from drinking. A person says, I'm done eating. But a person doesn't say, I'm done drinking. Aval achila tzarech tanai, sheyiste sheritzayna oilecha. V'lishtia ein tzarech tanai, v'chein haminig. Aruch HaShulchan says that's the minig, mishum da'anachnu regilim lishtais achar hashina, because everybody is used to drinking when they wake up. Okay, very good. We'll stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Berurah should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all those in need, and especially to our Chaverim who need a Refuah Shalema. Our thoughts are with Shlomo Zalman ben Mesha. Should have a Refuah Shalema B'Karev. Yisrael Tzvi, I always forget the name. Yisrael Tzvi ben Ruchama Edel. Excuse me here. Yisrael Tzvi ben Ruchama Edel Roiza should have a refuah shalema b'seich shar chayle Yisrael. Be well.